Hello, we're at Beaver Creek and I'm with Tim Clark, the CEO of Fury Gold Mines. Tim, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Kick things off, really brief company overview.
Quick overview, we're a junior exploration company focused on high-grade gold exploration in Canada. We're about 75 to 80 million market cap, depending on the day. We hold positions out in BC as well as up in Nunavut, but our focus in mining is really in Quebec.
Okay, just to also a bit of housekeeping, just cover off the capital structure as it is at the moment.
The capital structure, we've got about 145 million shares outstanding. Our share price is about 50 cents in Canadian. Ticker is FURY, and we were both listed in the US and Canada, which is unusual for a small cap junior.
Okay, and something that I really wanted to go into in your cap structure and your cash balance and your equivalents was, obviously from last stated you had around 12 million cash in the bank, was that right?
Yeah, we got about a little over 11 million in cash in the treasury right now. Our expectation is when we finish our project this year, we'll have between 6 and 7 million. Plus we also have this Dolly Varden position. It's worth somewhere between around 45 to 50 million dollars. It's free trading stock. We own 59.5 million shares of Dolly Varden, which is 23.5% of the company, and we have 2 board seats on the company.
Good. Because as it stands, obviously with the current cash position and the Dolly Varden shares, your enterprise value, minus obviously that value minus the market cap, sitting anywhere between around 10 million Canadian to 20 million Canadian, depending on the day, right?
Right.
So I guess investors, which is what it is. But
no, this is the issue that I find interesting coming from the capital market. So I spent 23 years basically selling stock to investors, to the large investors of the institutional market. And these were opportunities that I always hoped to jump on, because I think what you have here is a disconnect because we own so much of Dolly Varden.
Yep.
A lot of investors are very short-term focused, and they're looking at the payout today. And the payout today is if Dolly Varden gets bid away. And the scenario with that is it's a really interesting project in silver. There's not too many of them. It's in British Columbia. It's in the Golden Triangle. It's a hot area to be in. Hecla Mining happens to own 80 or 90% of the property around it. They're a likely takeout, but they're not the only ones. The stock has been of a high interest for the last year and a half. So what that does is it detracts from what we're doing for the rest of the company. When I came in here 2 years ago, we were underfinanced. They didn't have a lot of institutional. They did have Newmont as a owner, 6 or 7%. But since that time, we've brought in another producer. We've also shored up our balance sheet. We brought in a large institutional, one of the largest in the US. And we brought a lot new players to the market in terms of investing in the company. But again, it's back to Dolly Varden, and it's back to what's new discovery. And what we've done is cleaned up an old mine that I think was mismanaged, and we've put a pathway for that mine to be sort of heading towards the 2 million ounce scenario, and that's a big tick the box. If you get 200 million or 2 million ounces, you get like potentially in production, you get a couple 100,000 ounces a year for 10 years, and that's a pretty nice gig, right, as a base. But what people are missing is the big package, the big geography package, and the big discovery. Our Eau Claire mine happens to sit right near the Canard Deformation Zone. It runs for 100 kilometers. We own 30 of it. And we have another project that's about 14 kilometers to the east. It was a 2018 discovery. We've gone back. We had a big hit there last year. We're waiting for results the next couple of weeks. But further out, we've developed spent a lot of time doing survey work. And we've developed 14 anomalies near Percival, another 6 in La Clarke property, which is next door. And if we can show that there's a string of pearls that run along the Canard Deformation Zone, it could be really great, really fun.
What I wanted to touch on, obviously, with the enterprise value, obviously, where it is at the moment, is obviously Dolly Varden and the cash position that's fixed in. Everyone knows the value of that. I guess what you'd need to do is convince people or explain to people why your projects are obviously worth more than the remaining 10 or 20 million, which I believe they are.
Listen, I've had investors ask me this, like, how do you value these things? And a lot of these are in PEA studies, and they put huge, enormous numbers on them. And I think ours was like $400 million originally. But the reality is, think about what we put in. Like in Nunavut, we own a property in Nunavut. We put 60 million into that, and we bought it after someone else put 100 million into it. Yeah. That's not worth zero. It's got 1.3 million ounces, huge prospecting up there. We got a camp for 100 people up there. We got 1,000 barrels of oil and gas ready to go anytime we want to. What we're waiting for is a partner to go up there with in a better market, and we're starting to see interest. So that's not worth zero. And then you look back at the joint venture. The joint venture, we consolidated that joint venture with Newmont a year and a half ago and bought out Azimut. That property was valued at $10 million right there. So we got $5 million minimum. That's before we even get in there and start looking for discovery. And it happens to sit right next to the Eleanor mine, which is their mill is only working half capacity. If we found something there, it's worth a lot.
Yep.
So we go back to the Eau Claire property, which is 55,000 hectares. We got 1.3 million ounces right there, plus we've drilled for the last couple of years.
But it's also quite high grade as well, right?
It's high grade. It's also, I think what everybody focuses on too is drill results. And what are your drill results? Well, the drill results are meaningless unless you look at the underlying cost, that if they have to actually go build that mine. If you find incredible grade in the Andes Mountains, well, good luck. Good luck getting up there. But if you find it in James Bay, you can find, we have a lot to work with because we have such good infrastructure. You can drive an 18-wheeler right up to the edge of our property. You can drive a truck into camp. You can drive a truck up on top of the resource itself. It just doesn't happen too many places. So that lowers the bar for other big majors to come in. And so I actually brought in our chairman, Brian Christie, a month ago up there. He spent 10 years at Agnico, and he just couldn't believe it. He's like, we don't have anything like this. And you actually have to drive over an electric dam, and literally 5 feet is our driveway. And so it's pretty impressive when you sit down with the bigger companies.
I wouldn't mind touching on Eau Claire and Percival, because I think obviously they're your core focus at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned there the amount of ounces. I wouldn't mind you just recapping what these projects look like, what sort of depth they're at, what sort of mine plan potentially could they come under, and why you're targeting Percival. What's exciting about those?
Sure. Well, Eau Claire, again, 1.3 million ounces, and what we've done is, what we wanted to come in is reconfigure and show that this thing gets bigger. When I first showed up, the previous CEO wanted to do a development project, and they were trying to go out and raise a lot of money, but they hadn't finished drilling, and we didn't know how big it was. And so we've added 25% to the strike length just by going out to the west on the Hinge, which is a really prolific area. We've done the majority of our drilling is going to be out there and into the east side of that project this summer. But it's open to the west, it's open to the east, and open all below it. That we haven't gone past 650 meters. So I think it's got potential to grow a lot more. And again, you want to show a pathway to the majors of how big it can get. And right now we haven't been cut off. When you go out to Percival, there's a winter road that goes out there, so you can get to it. The chemistry of that property, of the ore there, is they'll be able to use it and put it in the same mill. And effectively, it was a 2018 discovery. It was a random miner who kicked over a rock. It was 18 or 15 grams, and they stuck a drill right behind it, and voila, they had a nice discovery. But what they did was they went to the west and the east thinking it was hopefully going to be an open pit, and they went too shallow, and they just didn't use the data they had. And when we went back and did 3D imaging, it showed it was plunging down, and we went back and put a couple holes there last summer, and voila, we're in it. And so, stock went up 100% at that point. And it was exciting. And I think we're going. I mean, obviously, one of the first things we wanted to do was get back there, but we had forest fires out there for the
I
month
was
of,
there when that was
you
happening. Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I mean, you can't put any more barriers in front of these things. You know, it's hard enough as it is to find. But anyway, we put 9 holes in there, and we're expecting the first set of holes to come back in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Before we actually move on to, I guess, what the future looks like, I wouldn't mind talking about the present in terms of the current market environment, because
right.
I think everyone realizes that the equity market in mining is obviously a bit soft. But I think, and as we were sort of talking about, that it seems to be a lot of corporate interest at this conference,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
And I guess from your view, I mean, what does that tell you in terms of? It seems like the corporates are actually here looking to actually start doing some M&A, right?
No, it's actually dramatic improvement. So again, being on the capital markets for as long as I've been, you watch these ebb and flows in the market, and your job is to pick good companies. The biggest money you can make, though, is buying at the dip, at the low, and it's the hardest thing to do. But especially when you get into an industry as sort of tight as this one, there's not a lot of liquidity. So the problem for investors is if they don't dabble in it, they'll wait and it'll come back and it can shoot up. Like if we get a couple of drill holes in the next 2-3 weeks, I would expect our stock to behave like last year.
Yep.
And what happens is it goes up 30-40%, and now you're like, oh my God, now what do I do? So I'm always under the pretense that you should seed a couple of half a dozen ideas or whatever you want to do, and sprinkle it around and try and catch some of this stuff, and then monitor what you think are the better companies and the news flow that's coming out.
Yep.
But with regard to the corporate side, effectively, you know, these guys have sat on things for a long time, and I think they're smelling that these juniors are kind of at the end of their rope in terms of financing, and they're easy pickings for great assets. We've been lucky because we've been able to finance in bad markets. Not everybody is. We've been lucky. We have good assets that have new discovery potential, and all of our assets happen to sit next to majors, and we've got big properties. So, and if there's a consolidation rush, it'll be good for us.
Yeah.
In the conferences we've had here, it's been less about investors and much more about corporate companies. And some of them have been approaching us and actually saying to us that for the first time they've got a mandate to explore and develop a pipeline for their companies. And this is things that only a few companies have been doing the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So that is huge.
Yeah, no, about time they start doing that.
Yeah.
Just talk us through the next 6-12 months. Obviously, you've got Percival drilling coming out and assays coming back, which is exciting. But what else can we expect past then?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, we're waiting to figure out what's going to happen with Dolly Varden.
Yep.
My position on that is, you know, I just was up at the mine with a site visit. I'm on the board. I like what they're doing. I saw the core. I'm not a seller right now. I'd like to watch and see what it is, and I'm optimistic. I'm a mining guy. So they have 90% of their drill results yet to come out, and they've got 5 drills going all summer. They had a huge project. They had $35 million to spend this year. And then at the same time, we've got 90% of our results ready to come out too. So I think what it is we all want to see where our share price ends up the next couple months. Mm-hmm. And then we've been out looking at other companies and trying to decide what we want to do, because you know, you don't want to sit as a too small company without the liquidity of a larger company position. And in my you know, sort of background, I'm an institutional guy, and I can't get a lot of my relationships in because we're not liquid enough.
Yeah.
And we just added Brian Christie to our board, who's our chairman. Brian has spent the last 10 years at Agnico, walking through every major investor office in the world with Sean Boyd at Agnico, and he's a real institutional, you know, name, and I think we will be able to grab some attention that way and get some good meetings. And I like our optionality. I think the best part about Fury for me is I'm not worried about the share price, because that enterprise value will close and people will recognize that. But we have a lot of levers. We have a lot of levers where we can win. We can win on discovery, we can win on a deal, we can win on Dolly Varden, we can win if we get another participation from a bigger institutional account or producer. And you know, we're in front of all these guys. And this is a great time in the market to be best of class, and I think we are.
No, it's good. There's a lot of stories in this market where it's a very similar
Yeah.
one project development pipe,
Right.
sort of go through the studies, but you've got so much optionality. It's actually
We
quite.
got the cash. There's probably nobody who has more cash than we do for the size we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Tim, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you,
Thank you.
Peter. Good questions.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.